There comes a moment when your soul is tired of surviving and is ready to start living. A moment when your heart whispers, it has been hard for too long. And right there, right in that quiet place between exhaustion and hope, God speaks a word that changes everything. It shall be easy from now. Not easy because the world suddenly becomes gentle. Not easy because challenges disappear. But easy because the weight you were never meant to carry is finally lifted. Easy because grace steps in where struggle once ruled. Easy because God does not just strengthen you for the storm. He teaches you how to walk above it. For too long, you have been measuring your future by your past pain. You've been assuming tomorrow must hurt the same way yesterday did. But God never designed your life to be a lifelong battlefield. There are seasons of warfare, yes, but there are also seasons of rest, seasons of flow, seasons where things align without force. And this is the declaration over your life now. The season is shifting. When God declares that ease is coming, he is not promising a life without obstacles, nor is he suggesting that faith eliminates difficulty. He is revealing a deeper truth. That struggle is no longer the defining force of your journey. For many, hardship has become so familiar that it feels spiritual, as though pain itself is proof of devotion. But God never equated suffering with closeness. He never asked his people to glorify exhaustion. Ease is not the absence of responsibility. It is the presence of divine order within responsibility. When God steps into a situation, what once felt chaotic becomes aligned, and what once drained you begins to sustain you. Challenges will still appear, but their power over you will be different. They will no longer dominate your emotions, hijack your peace, or dictate your identity. There is a difference between facing difficulty and living under it. God's promise of ease means you are no longer living beneath pressure, but moving through life with authority and perspective. What once overwhelmed you now meets a settled spirit. The storm may still exist, but it no longer defines the direction of your life. Ease begins when God removes unnecessary resistance. Much of what made life hard was not the challenge itself, but the weight of fear, overthinking, self-reliance, and the constant need to control outcomes. God never intended for you to carry tomorrow's worries with today's strength. When he says it shall be easy, he is saying that he is lifting the invisible burdens, the anxiety that kept you awake, the pressure to prove yourself, the exhausting effort to make everything work. Those weights quietly steal strength, and when they are removed, life feels lighter even before circumstances change. This divine ease does not make you passive, it makes you precise. You still move forward, but you are no longer frantic. You still work, but without panic. You still plan, but without fear of failure controlling your decisions. Ease sharpens discernment because peace clears the mind. Instead of reacting to every problem, you respond with wisdom. Instead of rushing into every opportunity, you wait for alignment. And in that alignment, doors open without force. Many people mistake ease for weakness because they have learned to survive through tension. But peace is not weakness, it is strength under control. God's ease teaches you how to remain steady when circumstances try to pull you into chaos. You stop interpreting every delay as rejection and every challenge as punishment. You begin to see life through trust rather than threat. And that shift alone changes how heavy life feels. Ease also transforms how you relate to God. Prayer stops sounding like a cry for survival and starts sounding like conversation. Faith matures from desperation into expectation. You no longer chase answers in panic. You wait with confidence, knowing that God is at work even when nothing seems to be moving. This does not make you careless. It makes you anchored. When God introduces ease, he is not lowering the standard. He is changing the source of strength. You are no longer operating on limited human energy, but drawing from divine supply. What once exhausted you now flows because grace is carrying the weight. You discover that obedience feels lighter when it is fueled by trust rather than fear. You obey not because you are afraid of losing God, but because you are confident in his presence. Ease also reveals what truly belongs in your life. Things that require constant struggle to maintain begin to lose their appeal. Relationships that drain you, goals that steal your peace, and habits that exhaust your spirit become harder to justify. God's ease brings clarity, and clarity simplifies life, you begin to understand that what is truly from God will not demand the destruction of your peace to sustain it. There's a quiet confidence that comes with divine ease. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You stop fighting battles that are not yours. You stop chasing validation. You know who you are, and that knowing removes unnecessary struggle. Life becomes simpler, not because it is smaller, but because it is aligned. God's promise of ease is an invitation to trust him at a deeper level. It requires releasing the belief that hardship is the only way things grow. Some growth happens in rest. Some breakthroughs come without noise. Some victories arrive without a fight. And when they do, you realize that God was never impressed by how much you suffered. He was always interested in how much you trusted. Ease is not the end of faith. It is the fruit of it. It is the evidence that God is involved, that grace is active, and that your life is no longer defined by constant struggle. The journey continues, but now it is carried by peace, guided by wisdom, and sustained by God himself. When a season of hardship finally gives way to ease, it is never accidental. It is the response of heaven to a life that refused to quit. Endurance is not loud, and it is rarely celebrated while it is happening, but it is deeply powerful. Every moment you stayed faithful while feeling tired, every time you chose obedience when results were delayed, every prayer you whispered through disappointment was quietly positioning you for a shift. God watches perseverance closely, and when its work is complete, he does not add more weight. He changes the season. The endurance you carried was not meant to last forever. It was a training ground, not a permanent residence. Many people misunderstand hardship and assume it is proof that God wants them to remain there. But endurance is never God's final intention. It is preparation. What you survived was shaping your capacity, sharpening your discernment, and strengthening your character. And now, because you did not abandon your faith in the waiting, God honors that endurance with transition. This new season is not built on force, but on flow. The reason things begin to feel easier is not because you suddenly became stronger, but because God is no longer requiring you to push through everything alone. Endurance taught you faith. Ease will teach you trust. Faith is believing God can do it. Trust is resting because you know he will. The season is changing because your heart is ready for a different way of walking away. Endurance refined you. It stripped away pride, impatience, and false confidence. It taught you humility and dependence. It showed you who you could rely on and what truly mattered. When those lessons are complete, God does not keep you in the fire. He removes you from it. Remaining in hardship longer than necessary would no longer produce growth. It would only produce damage. That is why God transitions you when endurance has accomplished its work. This shift also redefines how you interpret life. In the endurance season, everything feels like a test. You question every delay and analyze every closed door. But in the season that follows, you stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start asking, what is God doing next? The mindset changes because the pressure lifts. You are no longer being shaped by resistance. You are being guided by peace. Endurance builds spiritual strength, but ease reveals spiritual maturity. Maturity understands that God does not need constant suffering to prove your loyalty. It trusts that his goodness does not require pain as a prerequisite. When ease arrives, it is not a sign that you are less faithful. It is evidence that your faith has been proven. This transition also teaches you a new relationship with time. In the endurance season, everything feels slow and heavy. Waiting stretches you. But once the shift happens, you realize God was never late. He was precise. He allowed just enough pressure to prepare you, and then he released you at the right moment. What once felt like delay now reveals itself as divine timing. God does not forget endurance. He responds to it. He sees what people never noticed. He remembers the tears you wiped away in private and the prayers you kept praying even when hope felt thin. And when the season changes, it is not random. It is recognition. Heaven responds to perseverance with peace. The ease that follows endurance is not careless or shallow. It is deeply intentional. It allows you to enjoy what you once only survived. It gives you room to breathe, to heal, and to rebuild without pressure. And as you step into this new season, you carry wisdom, not wounds. You are no longer fighting to stay afloat. You are learning how to walk steadily on solid ground. This is how God honors endurance, not by keeping you in hardship, but by leading you into rest. Many of the heaviest struggles in life do not come from the problems we face, but from the burdens we were never meant to carry. Over time, these unseen weights settle into the heart and mind. Expectations placed on you by others, fear of disappointing people, pressure to counter all outcomes, and the belief that everything depends on your effort. God never assigned these burdens to you, yet they quietly drain your strength and make life feel far harder than it needs to be. When God says it shall be easy from now, he is declaring that these unnecessary weights are being lifted. God distinguishes between responsibility and burden. Responsibility strengthens you. Burdens exhaust you. Responsibility comes with grace, but burdens come with anxiety. When you carry what God assigned, you are supported by his strength. When you carry what he never gave you, you rely only on yourself. That is why so much effort produces so little peace. God's promise of ease is not about removing purpose. It is about removing pressure that never belonged to you. Many people assume that being faithful means carrying everything without complaint. But God does not measure devotion by exhaustion. He never intended you to become the solution to every problem or the emotional support system for everyone around you. Some of the pressure you feel is not spiritual warfare. It is misplaced ownership. You took responsibility for outcomes God reserved for himself. And when he lifts those burdens, life begins to breathe again. This lifting often feels unfamiliar at first. You may notice the urge to worry even when there is nothing to fix. You may feel guilty for resting or uneasy when things are calm. That is because struggle became a habit, not a requirement. God is retraining your soul to live without constant tension. Ease feels strange when you have lived in survival mode, but it is not dangerous. It is healing. When God removes these invisible weights, clarity follows. Decisions become simpler because fear no longer clouds judgment. You stop overanalyzing every situation. You no longer replay conversations or anticipate worst-case scenarios. The mental noise quiets, and at quiet, you can hear God clearly again. Peace becomes a guide rather than a reward. Lifting burdens also changes how you relate to others. You stop trying to rescue people who refuse to change. You stop feeling responsible for everyone's happiness. You learn the difference between compassion and control. God never asked you to save people. He asked you to love them. When that distinction becomes clear, relationships feel lighter and healthier. This release does not happen all at once. It happens through trust. Each time you choose to let God handle what you cannot control, a burden falls away. Each time you refuse to carry guilt that is not yours, your strength returns. Each time you stop trying to earn approval, your identity stabilizes. The more you release, the more peace increases. God's strength flows where trust exists. When you insist on carrying everything, you block the very help you are praying for. But when you let go, grace fills the space. That grace does not make you careless. It makes you focused. You become more effective because you are no longer scattered by fear and pressure. This lifting also reveals how much of your exhaustion was internal, not external. Circumstances may not change immediately, but your experience of them does. The same responsibilities feel manageable. The same challenges feel smaller. The load did not change. Your support system did. God stepped in where you stepped back. When burdens are lifted, joy returns naturally. Not forced happiness, but quiet contentment. You begin to enjoy moments instead of rushing through them. You stop living in constant anticipation of the next problem. Life regains its rhythm. Breathing becomes deeper. Rest becomes possible. God's desire was never for you to live under crushing weight. He is not impressed by how much you can endure alone. He is glorified when you trust him enough to let him carry what only he can. And as those burdens fall away, ease becomes your new environment, not because life is perfect, but because God is present. There is a point where effort stops producing results, not because you are doing something wrong, but because God is calling you into a different way of moving. Striving is often born from fear, the fear of falling behind, the fear of missing out, the fear that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. Grace, however, flows from trust. When God replaces striving with alignment, life begins to move with a rhythm that feels natural rather than forced. What once required constant pressure starts to unfold with order and timing. Striving depends on human strength, and human strength always has limits. That is why striving leads to exhaustion even when intentions are good. You work harder, think more, and push further, yet peace feels distant. Grace does not remove effort, but it changes the source of energy behind it. Instead of pushing from anxiety, you move from assurance. Instead of reacting to pressure, you respond to direction. Alignment allows you to invest energy where it actually produces fruit. Grace enters when you stop trying to make everything happen on your own. It begins the moment you accept that God is not asking you to force doors open. Some doors open only when you stop leaning on them. When you align your actions with God's timing and purpose, resistance decreases. What felt delayed was often protected, and what felt blocked was often misaligned. Grace rearranges circumstances without exhausting you. Alignment also brings clarity. When striving controls your life, every option feels urgent. You feel pressured to say yes to everything because you fear missing your moment. Grace teaches discernment. You begin to recognize what is truly yours to pursue and what is a distraction. Saying no becomes easy because your identity is no longer tied to constant productivity. You learn that busyness is not the same as obedience. This shift changes how success feels. Striving celebrates outcomes but ignores the cost. Grace values sustainability. God is not interested in blessings that destroy your peace. He does not reward you with opportunities that break your health or fracture your relationships. Grace-driven progress may appear slower, but it is deeper and lasting. You are no longer racing. You are building. Grace also heals the inner tension that striving creates. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop measuring your worth by visible results. You understand that alignment means your path will not look like anyone else's. And when you accept that, envy loses its power. Peace becomes your confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. When grace replaces striving, obedience feels lighter. You no longer obey out of fear of consequences, but out of confidence in God's guidance. Even difficult instructions carry peace because you trust the one who gave them. You are not guessing, you are following. That confidence removes inner conflict and reduces unnecessary struggle. Alignment also produces consistency. Striving creates bursts of energy followed by burnout. Grace produces steady progress. You learn how to move at a pace that honors both purpose and rest. This rhythm keeps you grounded, focused, and present. Life stops feeling like a constant race and begins to feel like a meaningful journey. Grace does not lower standards, it strengthens foundations. It removes the chaos around effort so that effort can be effective. When you operate from alignment, your work carries authority, your words carry weight, your decisions carry clarity. You are no longer scattering energy, you are directing it. Replacing striving with grace is not about doing less, it is about doing what matters most. It is trusting that God is capable of accomplishing more through alignment than you could ever achieve through force. And in that trust, life begins to flow. Before anything changes around you, God often begins his work within you. This is not delay, it is preparation. Many people are waiting for external breakthroughs while God is quietly stabilizing their inner world. Peace arriving before circumstances shift is not coincidence, it is confirmation. God settles the heart so that when change comes, it does not overwhelm you. If your inner world remained chaotic, even good blessings would feel heavy. That is why God starts with stillness. When peace enters first, it breaks the cycle of emotional reaction. You stop swinging between hope and disappointment based on what you see. Your joy is no longer held hostage by circumstances. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop panicking. You learn to stand steady even when answers are incomplete. That steadiness is not denial. It is trust maturing. God knows that sudden external change without internal preparation can damage faith. If he opened every door while your heart was still anxious, you would carry fear into the blessing. You would constantly worry about losing what you just received. Peace protects you from that. It teaches you how to hold blessings without fear and face challenges without collapse. This inner calm also sharpens spiritual perception. Anxiety clouds discernment, but peace clarifies it. When the heart is settled, you can hear God clearly. You begin to recognize his guidance without confusion. Decisions no longer feel rushed. You sense when to move and when to wait. That clarity is itself a breakthrough, even before circumstances change. Peace arriving early also redefines prayer. Your prayers shift from urgency to assurance. You are no longer pleading for God to act. You are trusting him to act in his time. This does not weaken prayer. It deepens it. Faith becomes confident rather than desperate, and that confidence honors God. Many people misinterpret peace as passivity. In reality, it is readiness. Peace positions you to respond wisely when opportunity comes. It keeps you from sabotaging what God is building through impatience or fear. When the moment arrives, you are prepared, not overwhelmed. This inner transformation also changes how you experience waiting. Waiting no longer feels like punishment. It becomes purposeful. You stop counting time and start noticing growth. You become aware of how your reactions are changing, how your thoughts are becoming healthier, how your trust is deepening. Waiting becomes a season of strengthening, not suffering. Peace before change also breaks the addiction to drama. You stop expecting life to be loud in order to be meaningful. You learn that God often works quietly. Some of his greatest moves happen without noise, without warning, without struggle. Because your heart is settled, you recognize them when they arrive. When peace enters first, it becomes your anchor. Even when circumstances begin to shift, that peace remains. You are not shaken by temporary setbacks or minor delays. You trust the process because you trust the one guiding it. This stability allows growth to continue without interruption. God does not calm you to make you complacent. He calms you to make you strong. Peace is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of fear. And when fear leaves, faith stands tall. By the time circumstances change, you are no longer desperate for them to change. You are ready for whatever comes next. This is how God confirms his work. He settles the heart first, then shifts the world around it. There are blessings that arrive only after you stop fighting for them. This truth feels uncomfortable because effort has been your language for so long. You were taught that if you do not push, nothing will move, and if you do not struggle, nothing will grow. But God works in ways that often contradict human instinct. Some breakthroughs are not released by force, but by surrender. When you release control, you create space for God to move freely. Surrender does not mean giving up or becoming careless. It means trusting God enough to stop trying to manage outcomes he already promised to handle. Control is exhausting because it assumes responsibility for what is beyond human reach. Surrender, on the other hand, acknowledges limits and invites divine strength. When you stop trying to predict every outcome, you begin to experience a peace that effort could never produce. Many blessings are delayed not because God is withholding them, but because your grip is too tight. You are holding the situation with fear instead of faith. Fear demands certainty. Faith trusts without it. When you surrender, you shift from demanding answers to trusting timing. That shift unlocks movement in the spiritual realm that force never could. Surrender also heals the inner restlessness that comes from constant striving. You no longer wake up rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You no longer feel responsible for controlling every variable. Your mind quiets, not because life is perfect, but because trust is active. In that quiet, clarity emerges. You begin to see solutions you missed when anxiety dominated your thoughts. God often waits for surrender because it proves readiness. If blessings arrived while control ruled your heart, they would become idols or sources of fear. Surrender ensures that gifts remain gifts and not burdens. It allows you to receive without pressure and enjoy without suspicion. When you surrender, you trust God not only with the outcome, but with your identity. This posture of surrender also changes how you respond to setbacks. Instead of reacting with frustration, you pause with perspective. You ask different questions. You stop assuming delay means denial. You trust that even closed doors are part of guidance. That trust protects your heart from bitterness and preserves joy. Surrender is not a one-time decision. It is a daily posture. Each day presents new opportunities to take control back or release it again. Over time, surrender becomes instinctive. You learn to recognize when anxiety is trying to reclaim authority, and each time you let go, peace deepens. God honors surrender with alignment. Things begin to fall into place without manipulation. Conversations happen naturally. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. Provision arrives quietly. None of it feels forced because it isn't. Grace is doing the heavy lifting. What once required endless effort now flows with timing. This does not mean life becomes passive. You still act, but your actions are guided rather than pressured. You move when prompted, not when panicked. You speak when led, not when desperate. That difference changes everything. Your energy is no longer scattered. It is focused. Surrender also restores joy. Joy cannot coexist with constant control because control thrives on fear. When fear loosens its grip, joy returns naturally. You begin to enjoy the present instead of rushing toward the future. You find contentment even while waiting, and that contentment strengthens faith. God never asks for surrender to take something from you. He asks for it to give something to you. Rest, clarity, and peace, the blessings that come through surrender, do not exhaust you. They establish you. They do not confuse you. They confirm you. And when they arrive, you recognize that letting go was not loss. It was the doorway to ease. Living in survival. Mode teaches you how to endure, but it was never meant to be your permanent way of life. Survival mode is when you are always bracing for impact, always alert, always preparing for the next problem. It sharpens instincts, but dulls joy. You learn how to make it through the day, but you forget how to look forward to tomorrow. God allows survival seasons because they protect you in crisis, but he never designed you to remain there. When he says it shall be easy from now, he is signaling a transition from merely enduring life to actually living it. Survival mode keeps your focus narrow. You concentrate only on what is urgent, not what is meaningful. You make decisions based on fear of loss rather than hope for growth. Over time, this posture becomes exhausting. Even good opportunities feel heavy because your soul is tired of fighting. God recognizes when survival has done its job. Once it has preserved you, he begins to lead you out of it. Leaving survival mode requires a shift in identity. When you have survived for a long time, struggle becomes part of how you see yourself. You begin to believe that hardship is normal and peace is temporary. God challenges that belief. He invites you to see yourself not as someone barely holding on, but as someone being established. This change in identity is essential because you cannot thrive while thinking like a survivor. As you step out of survival mode, your relationship with time changes. You stop rushing through everything. You stop measuring life by how quickly you can get through discomfort. You begin to think long-term again. You allow yourself to dream without immediately preparing for disappointment. This does not make you careless. It makes you hopeful. Hope returns when survival no longer dominates your thinking. This transition also affects how you use your energy. In survival mode, energy is spent reacting. You are constantly putting out fires. Outside of survival mode, energy is invested intentionally. You begin to build instead of just repair. You create instead of just cope. That shift is deeply freeing. Life becomes proactive rather than defensive. God does not rush this transition because sudden ease without inner healing can feel unsafe. If survival mode protected you, leaving it too quickly can feel like vulnerability. God is patient. He gently shows you that you no longer need constant alertness. He replaces fear with trust step by step. As trust grows, tension releases. Leaving survival mode also restores emotional range. When you are surviving, emotions flatten because feeling deeply feels dangerous. Joy feels risky. Hope feels fragile. As God leads you into a season of thriving, he restores your ability to feel fully again. You laugh without guilt. You rest without anxiety. You enjoy moments without expecting them to be taken away. This emotional healing is just as important as external change. Thriving does not mean life becomes perfect. Problems still exist, but they no longer dominate your inner world. You face them from stability instead of panic. You have margin to think, pray, and choose wisely. That margin is a sign that survival mode is ending. God's goal was never to keep you strong by keeping you stressed. His goal was to bring you to a place where strength flows naturally from peace. Thriving is not louder than surviving, but it is deeper. It feels grounded. It feels sustainable. It feels like home. When you finally leave survival mode, you realize how much energy fear was stealing. You realize how much life you were postponing. And as you step into thriving, you do not forget what you survived. You honor it by living well. This is not just relief, it is restoration. Peace is a gift, but it is also a responsibility. When God brings you into a seesaw, inn of ease, he entrusts you with something valuable that must be protected. Trust and healthy boundaries become essential, because not everyone will understand the change in your life. Some people were comfortable with you when you were exhausted, overextended, and always available. But when peace enters, access must be redefined. Guarding your peace is not selfish, it is stewardship. Trust is the foundation of ease. Without trust, rest feels unsafe. You may feel the urge to stay busy, stay alert, and stay involved in everything because you fear that if you slow down, things will fall apart. But trust teaches you that God is still working even when you are not. It allows you to step back without guilt and to rest without anxiety. Trust shifts your confidence from your effort to God's faithfulness. Healthy boundaries flow naturally from trust. When you trust God to lead your life, you no longer feel responsible for meeting every demand or solving every problem. You begin to recognize your limits and respect them. Boundaries clarify what you are called to carry and what you are called to release. They protect your energy so that you can give your best where it truly matters. Setting boundaries often feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you have spent years overgiving. You may fear disappointing others or being misunderstood, but boundaries are not rejection, they are direction. They teach others how to treat you and teach you how to honor yourself. God does not require constant availability. He values obedience more than overextension. Trust also reshapes how you say no. No no longer feels defensive or guilty. It becomes peaceful. You understand that every no protects a yes. When you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what strengthens you. This clarity reduces inner conflict and increases confidence. Decisions become easier because you are no longer torn between pleasing people and protecting and obeying God. Guarding peace means being selective with what you allow into your mind and heart. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every conversation requires your energy. Not every opportunity aligns with your purpose. Trust helps you discern rather than react. You stop absorbing stress that does not belong to you. Boundaries also protect relationships. Without them, resentment grows. With them, connection becomes healthier. You engage with people from fullness rather than depletion. You are present without being consumed. This balance allows relationships to thrive instead of draining you. Trusting God also means trusting the process of rest. Rest is not laziness, it is alignment. When you rest, you declare that God is in control. You acknowledge that your worth is not measured by productivity. Rest restores clarity and renews strength, making you more effective in the long run. Peace will be tested. Life will try to pull you back into chaos. Old patterns may resurface and old voices may challenge your boundaries. But each time you choose peace, you reinforce trust. Each time you protect your rest, you honor God's work in you. God gives ease, but he invites you to maintain it. Trust keeps your heart anchored, and boundaries keep your life aligned. Together, they create an environment where peace can grow and remain. Pain has a way of disguising itself as commitment. Over time, you can begin to believe that if something costs you deeply, it must be meaningful, and if it hurts to maintain, it must be valuable. But God does not design his will to be sustained by constant anguish. What is truly meant for you will challenge you at times, but it will not require the continuous sacrifice of your peace, identity, or health. When something demands ongoing pain to survive, it is a signal that it is not aligned with God's future for you. God's blessings carry weight, but they do not crush. They stretch you, but they do not drain you. When alignment is present, effort is supported by grace. When alignment is absent, effort feels endless. That is why some relationships, pursuits, or environments leave you exhausted no matter how much you try. The exhaustion is not proof that you need to try harder. It is evidence that you are carrying something you were never meant to sustain. There is a difference between temporary discomfort and ongoing anguish. Growth often involves discomfort. Learning, changing, and stepping into new territory can feel unfamiliar and challenging. But anguish is different. Anguish erodes your peace, distorts your sense of self, and leaves you perpetually depleted. God may use discomfort to refine you, but he does not use anguish to define you. When something is aligned with God's will, there is an undercurrent of peace even during difficulty. You may be stretched, but you are not torn. You may be tired, but you are not empty. You may face opposition, but you are not constantly defeated. Peace acts as a witness, quietly confirming that you are walking in the right direction. Many people stay in misaligned situations because pain has become familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown peace. You know how to survive what hurts, but you are unsure how to live without it. God gently challenges this mindset. He invites you to trust that peace is not weakness and rest is not abandonment of purpose. Releasing what requires constant pain often feels like loss, even when it is necessary. You may grieve the time invested, the effort given, or the hope attached, but God does not waste what you release. He uses it to redirect you. Letting go creates space for what is truly aligned to enter your life. When alignment is restored, maintenance becomes sustainable. You no longer wake up dreading the day. You no longer feel like you are constantly fighting against yourself. Even responsibilities feel manageable because grace supports them. This does not mean life becomes effortless, but it becomes coherent. Things make sense. Energy flows where purpose exists. God's will does not require you to betray yourself. It does not ask you to silence your conscience or numb your emotions. It invites your whole self into participation. When something consistently pulls you away from who God is shaping you to be, it is not a test. It is a warning. Peace is not a luxury. It is a compass. It points toward alignment. When peace disappears for long periods, it is worth paying attention. God often uses the absence of peace to redirect you before damage occurs. Listening to that signal requires courage, but it leads to freedom. What is meant for you will not destroy you to sustain itself. It will support your growth, honor your boundaries, and deepen your peace over time. And when you choose alignment over pain, you are not giving up. You are stepping into God's design for your future. There comes a time when constant warfare is no longer a sign of calling, but a signal that a chapter is ending. For a long season, life may have felt like one battle after another, always defending, always resisting, always recovering. That season had a purpose. It sharpened discernment, strengthened faith, and taught dependence on God. But God never intended warfare to be permanent. When he says it shall be easy from now, he is announcing a shift from constant resistance to divine flow. Divine flow does not mean life becomes careless or unguarded. It means that alignment replaces friction. You are no longer pushing against doors that refuse to open. You are no longer forcing outcomes through exhaustion. Instead, things begin to move with timing rather than tension. Favor replaces frustration. Guidance replaces guessing. You begin to sense that life is cooperating rather than fighting back. This shift often feels subtle at first. Battles do not disappear overnight, but their frequency and intensity change. What once consumed your energy now barely disturbs your peace. You still face challenges, but you are no longer drained by them. The reason is simple. You are no longer fighting alone. God is handling what you once tried to manage in your own strength. Divine flow also restores confidence. Constant warfare creates self-doubt because every step feels contested. But when God establishes you, confidence returns naturally. You stop questioning every decision. You stop assuming resistance means rejection. You recognize that not everything requires a fight. Some things require patience. Some require obedience. Some require rest. As warfare decreases, clarity increases. You can see your path without fear distorting it. You know when to move and when to wait. You are no longer reacting to pressure. You are responding to direction. This clarity is a sign that God is establishing you, not testing you. Divine flow also brings quiet victories. Not every win will be dramatic. Some breakthroughs happen silently. Relationships heal without confrontation. Opportunities appear without struggle. Provision arrives without panic. These quiet victories are often the most powerful because they confirm God's involvement rather than human effort. This season also changes how you interpret opposition. Not every obstacle is an enemy. Some are redirections. Some are protections. When you are no longer in constant warfare, you stop assuming everything is against you. You trust that God is guiding even when things do not go as planned. Establishment brings stability. You are no longer easily shaken by delays or opinions. Your identity is anchored. Your faith is settled. You know where you stand, and that knowing creates peace. Warfare demanded constant vigilance. Establishment allows grounded living. God does not remove warfare to make you passive. He removes it to make you effective. Energy once spent surviving is now invested in building. You create, grow, and contribute without exhaustion. Life becomes sustainable. This is the promise of divine flow, movement without constant resistance, progress without burnout, and purpose without chaos. God is not just rescuing you from struggle, He is establishing you in peace. The journey that began with endurance now concludes with alignment. You have fought when necessary, waited when required, and trusted when it was hardest. Now God invites you into a new way of living, not driven by fear, not fueled by pressure, but guided by peace and sustained by grace. This is the moment to walk forward without bracing for impact, to build without expecting collapse, to rest without guilt. The chapter of constant warfare is closing, and the season of divine flow is opening. God is establishing you not in noise, not in struggle, but in peace,